have a gander. Oh yeah, it's showing us live.
Cool. We're on then.
We are on. We are on. There we go. Okay, cool. So let's wait for a couple of people to join this stream.
Sounds good.
See who we've got going. Got loads of questions for you. Loads and loads of people have been talking. Hello all. So I'm here with Romesh, who is over at Longwave Studios over in Cardiff. Romesh has been kind enough to sit down with us and chat about some of the questions that we've obviously put together and some of the questions that he's been that you've been kind enough to ask us as well. Just so you know, you can win a pop shield today, courtesy of Romesh. Basically, if you put through your question, Romesh is going to choose the best person's question, and at the end of it, we will obviously get you details and reach out. So, yeah, how you doing, Romesh?
I'm all right. Yeah, not bad. How you?
Yeah, lockdown crazy, stir crazy. It's probably a good place to start. Actually, how you been coping with that?
Yeah, all right. Like, I mean, it's super weird, and not being able to do any tracking sessions or anything, but just been trying to get on with mixes and get some of that stuff done. But yeah, like what a weird time. Like can't do any tracking. I've had to move sessions around and stuff. But
yeah,
like mixing has been kind of keeping me going. So
have you had a lot of work to
do? There's been bits. Yeah, I have had a few things come in, which has been great. I mean, I guess the thing that we don't know now is like how much more mix work there'll be, because obviously there'll be a point where the studios would have closed and no one would have been able to track anything. So
yeah, of course. I mean, I guess that's a lot of, well, I know I found it quite a challenging experience to move from the realm of having people come in, and a lot of my stuff I mix as I go with a lot of clients. So I try to get kind of somewhat of a finished state before the vocalist starts tracking.
yeah.
And then that way it kind of brings out a bit of a better performance. Although this time it's kind of been more of a matter of doing Facebook, like FaceTimes and setting them up with their own recording setup and then trying to kind of direct them. Have you been doing anything like that at all remotely?
No, not really. But I know there's been quite a few people who have been doing that with a lot of success. But no, like I've kind of just pulled my tracking sessions because I think for me personally, I like to be in the room with them, and I think it's just too difficult for me to kind of.
It's a vibe thing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think luckily the artists who I was supposed to be working with, they'd be more than happy to move, and we just, as soon as everything's ready to go, then we'll start working again.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, like we've obviously with lockdown going on and not being able to do too much in the realms of going to the studio and working, doing those bits and bobs. Have you been, occupying your time with anything else? I found I'm doing a lot more reading.
Cooking is like a good way to escape the world a little bit.
Yeah,
doing that. But I run like an audio community called Control Room.
Yes,
and that's been super busy and super fun. So
that actually brings me on to one of my questions, actually, because I know that Control Room for me has opened up a literal plethora of like producers and real world audio engineers that are, stars. They are massive people that you otherwise I wouldn't have had any sort of interaction with, and majority of the community wouldn't have had any interaction with. How is it that people that are watching can get involved with that side of the community?
So yeah, I mean, like what you said is wicked. I mean, it's just an amazing hub. Like there's just so much information that's passed through it every day. And like, yeah, you can get involved. You can go to control-room.net. I think the link is also in the top of this post.
Yeah, awesome. We will we'll share it in the comments regardless anyway.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a discount that people can get on JZ microphones via the Control Room as well.
There is a huge discount. There's just by being a member of Control Room, there's 50% off, which is like insane. Like, I mean, I've got some of the mics, and like I would pay double what they cost anyway.
That now, see, I said some kind things about control room, but that is kind. That is very lovely.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that you were a fan of them, and we've spoken somewhat at length of what you like about them. I know that there's a lot of people within control room that you've opened their eyes to the brand as well, which is again
Yeah.
very kind of you. What? Sorry, Karen.
I was going to say, sorry, go on, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, I was actually going to ask, you know, what are what's your favorite, or what's your couple of favorite microphones that you have?
The V67 is the one for me. Like
The one.
Yeah, that's the best one. They've all got like different characters, but for some reason that mic is just incredible on vocals. Like I've got a very expensive U47 that's just this is a genuine story. It's just been sat in a box for quite a while now, because
Really?
the V67 is just like super clear. Like the detail on it is like, that's the thing that when I first tried it out, it was just way more clearer. And
I find it's got really, really nice kind of expensive frequencies, but a low end that doesn't get cloudy.
yeah, I mean, I guess like talking about it kind of makes this sound like super salesy and stuff, but it's not.
Yeah.
This is genuinely like how I feel about it.
I've actually got a post up from earlier where you shared it and gone, this isn't a paid promotion.
No,
like I'm just a fan of the mics.
I get, you know, I've got no involvement in that way, but I don't know. It's just, they're just super easy. Like I don't have to EQ them like as much as, you know, that I have to do with some other mics. Even like a pretty big mixer like called me up once. He was mixing one of my songs, and he asked like, "What are you using on this vocal?" And it's the same thing that I discovered. It's like it just seems to sit in the track really easy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been using them on overheads, on acoustic guitar, but mainly vocals. Like it just seems to work so well on vocal.
What kind of, I mean, I'm assuming that you've changed between preamps and things like that. Obviously, every vocalist has a different mic and every vocalist sounds different. Do you find that there is one particular signal chain that you keep going towards? Is there anything that you know works well with it?
So for me, I love using the Chandler TG2. That's like one of my favorite vocal preamps. But then what I'll do is I'll use a Blue Stripe 1176, which
Cool.
is it's either that or I've got a Retro 176 compressor. And then I hit I don't know if you've seen them, but there's these 500 units called, they're Roger Mayer 456s. They basically sound like you're hitting tape, and I just go into that as well, and it's just like,
You started using those recently, haven't you? Because I saw there was a few of them being made.
yeah, like I've had them now for a few months, and I just record everything through them. It's just so good.
Yeah, I need to get my hands on some of those.
I don't understand the background of it, but there's some wave shaping it does on the way in. So like it, I don't know. It's just everything I track through it seems to be.
Is it like Transformer or?
Yeah, it's basically simulating when you hit tape, but you can I mean, you can really drive it and saturate it. And there's a bias control, so you can make the tape. You can make it sound brighter or duller. You can move the head bump kind of thing. So
wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
we've got Carl and we've got Ted Westwood, who are both saying hello. Carl has said that he reckons that the control room is awesome. He's right. The control room is awesome. It was the funeral for a friend session that was up recently. This bunch, for those who don't know, the control room is Romesh's kind of child. It's a group for online community for audio producers and aspiring engineers, or professional engineers. There is for them to get involved in. There is, when I say a silly amount of real world, very, very large, both Grammy nominated like Romesh and Grammy winners, that have been kind enough to not only do live streams and do written Q&A, so you can save the post, you can go back to it, you can then open that back up and and go into your sessions and read something and try it out in the real world. We've got one of my favorite producers, Adam Getgood, who, for example, was saying how he wanted to get the serials from speakers, and then talks about how different speakers from different ages Mesa cabinets. Absolutely incredible.
I'm looking forward to, we're doing one with we've got like a live video stream with Mike Crossy in LA.
Yeah, I mean that to get
75 stuff, and I want to know like a lot of stuff about it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for those, like you said, for those who don't know who Mike Crossy is, he is the guy who he mixed 1975's record, didn't he?
Yeah, produced like a lot of stuff for them.
We've got the mastering engineer for that record as well
Robin Schmidt.
Absolutely incredible mastering engineer.
Yeah,
I mean, these are just some of the names that are in this room. So on top of all of that knowledge, you can also get hold of a control room only discount for JZ microphones. And on top of that, if you want to ask any questions at all about how to get involved, then we'll have a link in the description below. And in the comments, and if you ask Romesh some questions, he's going to be picking up one of those and then choosing a winner to win a JZ microphone pop shield, which we mentioned earlier, but obviously a lot more people have joined in now, so I just wanted to get that back out there. We've got Steve Beck, who's also agreeing with the control room is an epic community. He's not wrong. So let's get back to these questions. I've got a few more over here. I guess we should probably start. What I wanted to ask you personally, how do you actually get started with this in your career? Like, what was the turning point for you?
I mean, for me, like, I mean, I started out being, just playing guitar, and for me, the one thing that I always wanted to do and I was obsessed with was like getting guitar sounds that I wanted to hear to come out the speakers, and that's kind of where everything started. Really, was that kind of obsessing over, how can I get this guitar sound, like looking at different ways to do things. It just all started there, really. I was in a band for a while, and I wasn't interested in being in a band. I just loved being in the studio all the time when we were like recording stuff, and that kind of made me really get into it. So I built a small studio on the side of the house, and that was my starting point, really. There was a band called Kids in Glass Houses.
Great band.
Yeah, great band. And a band called Dopamine and the Blackout. And
Blackout. Taking me back to my emo days, Romesh.
I was doing stuff with them, and when they started to kind of get big, then I kind of went with them in a certain way, like, because I think a lot of bands then were like trying to get me to work on their bands, and they wanted that kind of sound, and it, I guess it just kind of went from there, really. It was
I like the fact that you got started on the quest for the perfect guitar tone, and I mean, it's never ending.
It's never ending. Yeah.
I mean, I was in a similar position. I mean, I'm not nearly in a similar position. Not a lot of people are. For those who don't know, Romesh is a Grammy-nominated producer now. He rightfully earned his place among those names for the Brim Horizon Ammo record, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Recorded that with them in 2 months out in LA.
Absolutely phenomenal record. I mean, for me, it's one of my for me personally, it's one of my references for any of my mixes. There's some things that are on there that just sound too smooth to be human. So yeah, props to you from myself on that one. One thing I really wanted to know is, what was it like finding out that you'd been nominated for that Grammy? Because I remember seeing your post and you not kind of realizing and not feeling like it was real.
I mean, it's everyone's dream to have a record they've been involved with, get nominated in that kind of, that level of recognition. So like, yeah, it was amazing. I didn't even realize until I started getting messages on my phone. But it was amazing. Like, got to go, and that was dream come true kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the flight looked quite cool, quite cozy.
Yeah.
I mean, that record itself, what was it like working with the guys from Brim Horizon?
It was really good fun. It was 2 months out there. We did it in a great studio called Sphere, and yeah, no, it was really good fun.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any like kind of I guess there's not like a specific rule or a specific trick, but would you have any advice for anyone that is aspiring to get to that level? You're obviously a further way down your career path now, but at the same time, there's also people that like Phineas, who is Billie Eilish's brother. There's a certain X quality that has to come from someone. I'm just wondering, do you know if there's any sort of advice that you can give to that person to try and unlock that?
I mean, to be honest, I always kind of say this to producers who are looking for advice, and it's just always make sure the last thing you do is the best thing it can be. I really do believe that you get judged on the last things you've done, and you never know where someone's going to hear something you've done. So like, there's definitely been some artists I've worked with where I wasn't quite sure if they had enough people behind to kind of make it work, and then a couple of months later they've been signed by Universal. So
wow.
you just don't know who's going to hear what you do. So I think my advice would just be to make sure everything you do is the best it can be.
I think that's some really good advice. I've got a couple of questions coming in as well. We've got Catherine Williams, who said, you visited me and gave me a mixed demo at Winchester University last year. I'm one of Niall's music production students. Hope you're doing well.
That was great. That was really good. That was a really good day. That I enjoyed.
What were you doing there?
I did a masterclass at the University of Winchester.
Oh, awesome!
With a guy called Niall Thomas, and yeah, it was great. I quite enjoy doing a lot of those masterclasses. They're good.
Yeah, I've literally just got involved in some teaching that unfortunately got cancelled before the lockdown, but I might come back to you and ask you if you've got any tips and tricks on how to keep a class under wraps, because it's going to be brand new information for me. We've got Carl Gettin, who said, hi Romesh, is there a 500 series preamp or compressor that you would recommend to use on male vocals with the V67?
Probably the one I love is that channel TG2. I think is
that a 500 series one?
It is 500 series as well as full size. That thing's amazing. It pairs really well with that mic.
Nice.
Yeah, I would definitely suggest that.
Nice. I've got I haven't found the perfect one. I don't have a huge amount, but I've got a DBX 676 that I really like. That works very nicely with it, and that's vacuum valve. So but it's also got a really nice kind of mastering grade compressor in there as well. I don't know if you've heard of those ones, but they're really good. They're really nice. I have quite a few other questions as well. So what kind of, we're going back to the mics, going back to the V67 in fact, while we're on it, what kind of projects have you used it on?
I just used it on that new Holding Absence, the 2 songs that were out. That's Jay-Z on there.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I liked it so much.
I mean, I couldn't, my mind's gone blank, but honestly, it's been one of my main vocal mics for quite a long, since I got it.
Wonderful.
So
do you use it on anything else?
Overhead sometimes.
Cool.
Yeah, sometimes I'll use it there. I go between that or a pair of Coles, depending on what kind of sound I want. Jay-Z is a bit more hi-fi and brighter sounding, and obviously the Coles are quite dull, so
they're quite dark, aren't they?
Yeah, but they brighten up really nicely as well. So I go between those. An acoustic guitar, I think they're like superb for.
Yeah, I found really good results with the V67 on acoustic guitar, but I found really good results with the BH1 as well. I don't know if you use that.
I was speaking to Andrews about it, because when I first kind of got them, I was like I was trying to work out like how there was just so much more detail in them, and I think he was talking about that golden drop technology. And
there is, yeah.
That's
slightly lighter weight.
Right. Okay. That's what it is.
Yeah, so the BH1 is one of the fastest moving capsules I've ever come across. But for rap vocals especially, it's absolutely insane. And spoken word, it catches transients really quickly, so it leaves less for the compressor to do at the end of the day. You don't have to smash it so much to try and get that initial punch.
Yeah,
Which is
that's
quite nice.
the one. Like how you just described it is what I noticed. Like pretty much the.
Yeah, it's just one of those, like, I don't know any other microphone because I've obviously used other microphones and I've got quite a few of them, but there's nothing that really matches that. I used the V11 next to me on an acoustic guitar the other day, and that works really, really nicely on the back of the bridge. But if you haven't tried it yet, BH1 over the 12th fret, it's quite a bright microphone as it is already, but I found phenomenal results either by having the V67 or just the BH1. And there was a thread in the control room the other day where me and you both agreed that just one over the top of the guitar worked so nicely, just like aimed over about a foot away.
I think a lot of placement is just down to like listening with your ear, and I was kind of talking about this about drums the other day, and people were asking, how do you position room mics? And like for me, it's just walking around the room until I find that that spot. And I think.
Do you listen for one thing in particular while you walk around the room?
Yeah, I'm looking for where the most amount of low end builds up, because for me, with the drum rooms, I want the most amount of shells to be in those mics. I don't want loads of cymbals. So it doesn't make sense to me putting those mics in the thinner sounding part of the room. I want to find where the bass is like building up and where I can get more of those low frequencies coming in. So then they kind of outpower the higher ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the things I do, is just listen for where those low frequencies are kind of building up.
Nice. I mean, I've heard a lot of people saying they like looking at, like, trying to hear for the snare and the kick drum because they want that long tail to go through. I'm guessing you're not going to have your microphones quite high up, but more kind of mid-range. Would that be right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are problems that come with having mics really high, and that's that you just start to get a noticeable flam sometimes in some rooms.
Off the back of the ceiling or the back wall.
Yeah, just reflections, and then you bring them up and they flam too much. So yeah, but you just got to kind of experiment a little bit. But I generally don't have them too high because I feel like I'm catching more of the cymbal stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I just try and look for where the good low end points from the room really, and kind of start there.
That's a really good tip. So I'm just trying to think of what other questions we have. I mean, like I say, we've actually got a competition for those who are watching. If you send in your questions, the best question is going to be picked by Romesh at the end of this. We'll get in contact with you, and you can win a JZ microphone pop shield. So make sure you send those questions in. We can get those obviously answered by Romesh himself. That'd be a great name. It's like this guy called Rob himself, isn't there? I always think of that whenever I say someone's name and then himself afterwards. So just trying to think. So have you got any projects that you've been doing, anything new or strange when it comes to mic placements, using mics? Is there any new pieces that you've kind of been using? Is there any
I mean, nothing weird lately. I mean, I think
I mean, are you able to record at home during lockdown? Do you have anything?
No, I mean, my studio is separate. It's in a separate place, so I only go down there obviously on my own just to mix. So like, I'm not tracking anything at the moment. All my stuff is mainly mixing right now. Cool. I'm getting a lot of there's various labels who I work with who they still need things mixed. So I'm doing that at the moment. It's a lot of kind of international work that's come in. So that's
that's good.
But yeah, like it's until we know what's going on, I'm sure.
I've got no idea yet either. It just seems like one never-ending story. It's like the stairs in Mario 64. You keep running up them, but they never end. It's like feels like what lockdown's going to be. We've got a couple more questions that just came in. Catherine Williams has asked a couple. She said, if you're mixing a pop track, what would be the essentials in your template in specific vocals and also general submixes, etc.? In other words, what would you swear by on your vocal on? What would you swear by on your vocal chain?
I mean, obviously every vocal is different. I mean, I do have a template starting point because I like to kind of mix. I like to be able to go fast because when I'm mixing, I'm kind of chasing a sound that's in my head. So I don't like anything stopping me. So I don't like to stop and have to build a bunch of like auxiliary sounds and stuff like that. So I've got a lot of routing already kind of set up, and then I've got plugins that I like that are inactive that are ready for me to, it just makes me work, a lot quicker. And but for vocals, there's just so much stuff. I'm a huge fan. Like my favorite vocal compressor is a Blue Stripe 1176. So I tend.
Why the Blue Stripe?
It's something to do with the high end, the way that it grabs that those high frequencies feels different to me than a black. And I don't know.
It's a bit more mid-range, isn't it? It's a bit more of that.
Yeah, it pushes the vocal forward a little bit more. So I'm like really into that. But then I'll use. I mean, there's things like FabFilter Q3 that I love for kind of getting rid of any horrible resonances in the vocal. I love Soothe by is it Oak Sound? I don't know how to say it.
Oak Sound, yeah.
That thing's just changed my life.
Knowing that is Finnish, from Finland, Finnish. Is that how? Is it Finnish? I always feel weird saying that. Knowing it's Finnish, I always feel like I need to say Oak Sound, like it's like Scandinavian.
That thing has like saved me hours of
really.
Yeah, because like I used to have to like automate a lot of resonances out and stuff like that, and it just saves you so much time, and it's really good. And as long as you kind of use it carefully, you don't hear it kind of ducking those things out. But so yeah, like I'll use that, and then I'll either a Blue Stripe 1176 or Plugin Alliance do a thing called Opticom, which is insane. Cool. That's just so much vocal glue. One thing I usually do is I might use two compressors together. So I might use the 1176 to give me a lot of the energy, and I might kind of hit that fairly hard, but then I'll use like an LA2A or the Opticom afterwards, and I'm just tapping it just to glue the whole thing back together again a little bit.
Yeah, I do exactly the same thing, but I do it on a bus.
Yeah. Right. So I guess like try doing that, Catherine. Like maybe try two compressors, like one doing a majority of the work and one just like an opto compressor or something doing just gluing it together and keeping it in one place. The other thing that I use are like parallels, which parallel compression on vocals. I'll probably use something fairly aggressive and then just blend a little bit of that in. And then obviously effects are to taste, but I will generally have quite a few faders of different things, and I'll be blending until I find something that works for that song.
It sounds, by the sound of it, that you have aside from obviously the Blue Stripe being pushed or not pushed, that you have quite a clean signal chain. Do you, aside from the preamp, obviously the TG12 is a little bit more of saturation, but aside from that, do you push anything? Do you have any sort of saturation that you wet dry into it?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I'm tracking vocals, the mic I'm using will usually go into one of those Roger Mayer 456s.
Yeah, you did say.
Which gives me quite a lot of saturation, and that seems to just help it sit in the mix for me without having to do too much much more work later on.
Nice.
But yeah, like I mean, effects wise, it's all to taste. I mean, like micro shifts is quite a popular thing in the pop world, where you kind of detuning one side and detuning another side by different amounts.
I haven't heard of that. Do you want to explain that a little bit more?
It came off an old Eventide patch on the H3000, and it's it's basically, the idea is basically you're detuning the vocal by say 15 cents on one side and 10, and you're detuning it plus 10 cents on the other side, and then you have a slightly different delay for each one of those. And what it does, you can basically just spread your vocal out into stereo a little bit.
Oh, cool.
If you go too far, you get 80.
It starts getting a bit weirdy.
Yeah,
like a bit chorusy.
Yeah, I mean it is essentially a chorus, but if you use it gently, it's an amazing pop widening tool that's just it's been used forever.
I've actually got a session that I'm working on. I've got some vocals coming through tomorrow. That is a pop session, so I'm going to try that, and I'm going to tell you how that works. We've got another one coming through. Thank you very much for that, Catherine, as well. That was a really good answer. That was a really good question as well. We've got Steve Beck, who is saying about the BX Townhouse. I know that you swear by that. You shared a couple of your presets in that in the control room as well for that. Do you use that on your vocals, or is that more just a mix glue?
That's my 2-bus compressor. That's all over my mixes. Since I discovered it, it's very hard to stop using it. It's like
it really is
an amazing mix compressor by Plugin Alliance again. Yeah, I love that thing. I use it on drums as well.
Cool.
I use it as a parallel on drums. Anywhere that I kind of like that SSL compression, or anywhere I'd use an Al Smart compressor, I kind of put the Townhouse there in that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that plugin. We've got a couple more coming through. We've got Ted Westwood, who is saying many of us have very different ways to handle our low end and allow that element to cut through. What do you personally do to create and sculpt that space? And what are your preferred preferences in a band allocated to, and what are your preferences in the band allocated to each instrument?
I don't quite understand the second part.
No, I don't understand the second part of that. Ted, can you follow up on that part?
In terms of the low end, my main thing is I want to get the kick and the bass to work, as everyone does. But I mean, I don't go crazy on it, because I don't want to be cutting so much bass guitar out that it's kind of non-existent. Because I love bass guitar. I think it's it really glues everything together. So I mean, what I'll tend to do is I'll only do stuff if I think it's fighting. I don't tend to just go in and just automatically do anything. I'll kind of have a look. The Q3 EQ is a really good way, because you can actually overlap 2 channels together and see where they are. I mean, you can do it by listening as well, but it's quite a cool little tool. But
do you use side chaining as well as EQing?
Sometimes I'll side chain. I very rarely do, but when the track's a bit busy, I find that sometimes I might need to just duck the low end on the bass out every time the kick hits. But what I'll usually do is use a multi-band to do that. So that I'm not ducking the entire bass guitar out. I'm just ducking out, say, 90 hertz and below, or whatever it is, just to make that room.
I take you use a bit of Fab Filter for that as well. MV.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I love that one. Sorry, he said where the kick, bass, and keys sit specifically on the low frequencies. What are your preferences for where the band, how do you work with those kind of the band's instruments individual? I'm trying to think of how to word this. So each band has obviously low elements to their instruments. How do you deal with each one of the band's preferences towards their instrument, as well as also trying to tame the low end, I think is what he means?
I think the only way that I can maybe explain what he's getting at is I like the low end of the kick to be my kind of main fundamental low frequency, because for me, with the kind of music I do anyway, the kick is the kind of pulse of the track. So the kick is always kind of my main low end. The bass guitar will sit just a bit above that, maybe. Keys are just I mean, it's so hard to say because there's so many different key sounds. But I think as long as I don't want to take I know a lot of people talk about kind of high passing everything, but there's also good stuff there. So
Yeah.
it's just trying to make it all work, really, and not take things out just because you read that you should take it out. That's not how it should work.
Yeah, I guess another point on that, like you just said, like taking things out because that's what you've read. I guess it's more of a matter of trying to use your ears to listen as well. Actually, one of our friends, Abe Fiamma, he also mentioned something on this recently in a video that went out recently for JZ. We did an interview. He said the biggest thing for him was that he realized his arrangement, and especially on the topic of keys, like you're saying, is so different because depending on where the keys sit and where they are in that spectrum, it can be a different thing. I guess it's composition as well. If you find that you're fighting too much with your low ends, then maybe move things up a register.
I think, I was talking to someone the other day, just trying to help them out with something, and this kind of seems to crop up a lot, and it's people who are spending so much time EQing stuff, but they're doing it in solo, and you don't really. There's not a lot you can get from that because you have to listen to stuff in context with the mix, because you may have a nasty resonance on a guitar or something, but in the track there may be other things that mask that, and you can still keep those frequencies in there. So I think the one main piece of advice, if you like, is like always try and do as much EQing as you can while the actual rest of the mix is going on, because it all has to work together, not on its own. No one's ever going to hear the kick drum on its own. It's like it has to be how it works as a whole thing.
Would you say that also working in mono and switching between mono and stereo is a good idea? Because I find that when I personally use that, my way of like translating stuff is I'll use like a Google Home, for example, which I've realized is then only in mono. And a lot of people obviously have like an Amazon Echo or a Google Home. Do you find that you work on like maybe an Ableton Cube to listen in mono or something similar?
I don't really, to be honest. For me, I always want it to sound great in stereo, but I do take into account that a lot of like Sonos and stuff like that are mono. So I've got a bunch of Sonos units in the studio, which I can quickly see how it's sounding. But a lot of the time I just make conscious decisions that I know it's not going to fall flat in mono, that there's going to be enough content there that's going to work. But I don't really mix in mono now. I don't like to make too many sacrifices with the stereo. I want the stereo to sound great. So
yeah, it does usually. So I don't think I've ever crawled across one of your mixes that I don't like. I actually have, before we go on to another one, speaking of stereo, I was listening to a couple of your live mixes. For those who don't know, Romesh hasn't only just done some incredible artists like Holding Absence as a recent one, Grammy nominated for Bring Horizon, Funeral for a Friend, if I'm not mistaken, Kids in Glass Houses. He also has done the Royal Albert Hall live DVD for Bring Horizon as well, I seem to remember. And am I right in saying that you did a Slipknot one?
Not a Slipknot one, no.
No, I can't remember who that was. But anyway, so the Bring Horizon one, that must have been insane, because there would have been so much going on, especially in Royal Albert Hall. There's so much to take into account there. And did you have like crowd mics or anything like that as well? How many tracks did it end up roughly?
I can't. The whole session was huge. I can't remember, but it definitely was like the hardest mix I've ever done.
Really?
Yeah, look, it was that band has to sound massive, and they have to sound like widescreen, and you're trying to do that, and then you've got an entire orchestra to fit on top of that, and then a choir on top of it again. Like it was really tricky.
I think it's one of the best mixes I've ever, like, recorded or live, it is one of the best mixes that I've ever heard, because especially It Never Ends. Like, I remember when that first came out and I was like this little emo kid and I loved it then. So then listening to that come back, but then with the violins and staccato and the choir and everything, you just made it sound like it came to life in my head.
Thanks. There's a lot of automation on it. That's the key. Like, so when I was mixing it, I mixed it to picture. I had a cut of the video.
Wow.
So what you don't, the one thing that you may not notice, but it's happening, is every time there's like a shot of, say, one of the string players or something, there is a tiny ride so that you kind of connect visually to what you're hearing, if that makes sense. So like,
okay,
because I wanted those things to poke out when you were seeing them. So that is happening.
That's so cool.
And then I remember the opening song is Doomed, and I mixed the whole show up until the first chorus 2 dB quieter, because I wanted this big dramatic kind of punch for the first chorus. So I mean, if you do watch it back, you'll know.
I'm gonna go and watch it after this and listen for whenever I see someone and be like, they're gonna be louder.
Like, long before the chorus, and then that's the master fader going up to the show level.
Absolutely amazing. Right, that's blown my mind. That's a personal one for me. Going back to some of the questions that we've got here. We've got Alexander Jeffries says, "Hi Romesh, a long-time fan of your work. Recently joined Control Room. I'm just dipping my toe in into some of the content. It's great stuff. Is there any books, podcasts, or any other media that you would recommend that I check out in production or mixing?"
There is an old book that I read when I was starting out, and it's still amazing because it teaches you a lot of useful stuff. Some of it's like sciencey, but it's really good to know. It was called Modern Recording Techniques, and I think it's like just been revised over the years. So there should be a new version of it. But that book is killer. It's really, really good.
I +1 that as well. I got that when I first started out.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of I mean, you know, I think we're quite lucky that we live in a world where there's just so much information online now. So I think that, you know, there's tons of podcasts. I think even we have one in Control Room as well, and that's just like amazing.
One thing that I'll say now as well on that is that Romesh actually does do a lot of the PDFs in Control Room that you're able to download, put onto your phone and read through. So if obviously you said you're a fan of Romesh, one thing, and you're part of Control Room, one thing that I would do is definitely check out those PDFs. I'm sure we can put a link into well, I don't know if we'll be able to do that because it's obviously a private group, but is there something else that we can do to help him?
Well, yeah, I mean, if he's in there, then he'll be able to find those. So.
Cool. Ted said that he loves Trackspacer for prioritizing the fundamental of his kick.
I've never used that yet, but I've heard very good things.
I tried using it a while ago, and I found that it was a bit phasey.
Okay.
Quite like depending on what you were using. I was using like 2 or 3 mics on a kick drum though, and it was the first time I used it, so maybe I had a bad experience. But I've heard a lot of people say it's quite good. Going back to your micro shift comment, there's a sound toy sale on at the moment, apparently. So anyone that's interested in using that and using your pop production technique, then definitely go and check that out. Andy Bosley has asked, what's your opinion of Slate digital products, particularly their microphone system, or is it a step too far?
I have never used it, so I can't comment. I don't know.
Do you know who has?
What's that?
George Lever swears by it.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely swears by it. He uses it on everything.
Fair play. I've got a handful of mics that I love, and I just kind of one of those will do what I need it to do. So I'm kind of, that's enough for me.
Do you use any of the other Slate digital plugins?
I've got a bunch. I'll use Trigger now and again if I need to do any replacement stuff. I can't think, my mind's gone blank. But
how does have you used the Blue Stripe 1176 on their virtual mix rack. Does it compare to your one that you have?
Yeah. I mean, I think they sound different. They both sound great in their own ways. For me, I prefer. I've got a hardware one which is amazing, and the UA Blue Stripe is like incredible. That's almost worth like buying one of their interfaces.
You've sold me on that one, because there's quite a few of the UA bits, and there's quite a few things that Plugin Alliance and Brainworks have made specifically for UA that you can't use native. So I've been meaning to pick up one of those little processing units for so long. So it's probably a good idea that I do, especially if that's the case, if it's as close to the real thing as you'll get. Let's have a quick gander. Thanks for answering that one as well, mate. Ted Westwood said that there's also a further discount inside the group. You're very right. There is a massive discount inside Control Room, so if you're not part of that already, definitely go and check that out. Catherine Williams asked another one. She said, how extreme do you go on your vocal editing? Example, tight clip gain balancing in Pro Tools or similar before even hitting the compressor. Is this a really vital step for your mix prep? Do you let the compressor do most of the work? Would be nice to hear how this varies for your mixes depending on the genre as well.
I mean, I tend to not get involved so much with the editing now. I've got a wicked guy called Rob who works for me, and he gets everything prepped, exactly how I want it. But some of the things that I will do is we might like align vocals. I hate having staggered endings of lines and stuff. So that always gets sorted out. In terms of like clip gaining stuff, yes, I will sometimes feed certain words to go hit the compressor a bit harder. So yeah, it's great for that. In terms of editing, it all depends on if I'm kind of compressing, how hard I'm going to hit the vocal. If I'm compressing it pretty hard, then I may ask for the ends of lines to be pretty tight, because otherwise I'm going to bring up all that noise in between the lines and stuff. So, but then there are some times where if I'm not going to be doing too much compression work, then I don't mind it breathing a little bit, and it's all song dependent. I think if it's more of a kind of pop, kind of production style, then yeah, you may start kind of doing some heavy edits. But I mean, if it's rock and roll, or if it's something like that, if it's a bit punky or whatever, then I'm not going to bother doing that. I want it to be a bit more real. So
yeah, cool. Okay, and we've got Dominic Hodgkiss. I'm really bad with this. Hey Rom, hope you good. I've got a few of your mixes in a reference order, and I was wondering if you have any favorite mixes or mixes that you look to for referencing inspiration. I am interested in this one.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I would say I love how Uptown Funk by Mark Ronson sounds. I think that low end is amazing on that.
That's a great one.
There's a Maroon 5 record which
it's like the last band I was expecting to come out of your mouth.
Sounds amazing. Again, the low end on it's great. I think it's got a really long song title. I can never remember what it's called, but there's a song on there which is just so good for referencing low end with. I mean, I don't know. I don't use references that much. I don't. Maybe I should. I don't know.
I mean, I hear a lot of people saying that they reference to the previous tracks or like tracks from a year ago and things like that. Do you do something similar there?
Not really, no. But I mean, if I'm mixing an album, I may be referencing some of the other album tracks just so I know that we're kind of staying in a certain way.
Do you reference to their previous albums?
No. I mean, not unless I've got some real issue somewhere, but no, not really. I mean, any of that stuff I'll be listening to before I'm even doing the production or before I'm even starting the mix. If I need to get some inspiration or I need some kind of rough ideas of where to steer the mix, but once I'm mixing, I kind of just try and go for it.
Okay, cool. We've got Alexander Jeffries. We are going to have to finish this up soon as well. So if you've got any questions, do obviously bring them in. There's still time for you to enter into the competition. Romesh is kindly going to be giving one of the JZ microphone pop filters away for the best question. He's going to pick that after the stream has ended. We'll tag that person, then they can get in contact with us, and we can obviously liaise with them. But we will be finishing up about 6 o'clock, so you've got about 10 minutes to get in touch. We've got Alexander Jeffries, who said, thank you for the book recommendation. Was recently visiting Decade's album Pleasantries for some of the guitar tones and effects because they're simply awesome. What would be the most experimental, what is the most experimental you've done with to like capture a tone? What's the weirdest thing, basically?
I mean, in terms of that Decade album, there's definitely a few moments where we just used a little Marshall belt amp, and we put
that little one that you posted before.
Yeah, and put a Cole's massive ribbon on it. It looked ridiculous. But, there was definitely a few moments where we used that because there's something really cool about if you want a guitar to cut through in a kind of really forceful way using a very small speaker, it just, you know, all that mid range is just going through, and like we used that on quite a few things. I think I put a video up somewhere from the Decade album, and like you can actually see the take and like, you know, being used. But I don't know, for me it's like I don't do anything like crazy with guitars, but it, you know, it's usually like, you know, using some cool pedals, and I love like loads of the Earthquaker pedals for like effects and stuff like that. So
do you have a preferred kind of selection of mics? I know a lot of people just stick to like dynamics and maybe one like 414 or something like that.
I tend to go. I tend to have a 57 and a 121, and then maybe a Bayer 160 as well. For one thing that I do is I don't record the mic separately. I blend them at the tracking stage, so I make a decision there, and then my guitar ends up on one track. I really don't like kind of having the guitar sound being this open-ended thing that, you know, you constantly changing the balance and stuff. Otherwise, you don't make a decision, and you can't really get the production right. I can't anyway.
So you commit to the tone as you go into the box.
Yeah, it goes in, you know, and you know, I've always got a DI if I need to roll back, but I just find it a way better way of working. I don't want to see, you know, piles of guitar tracks for like a few different parts, you know, because it builds up. If you're recording every mic, it just all it does just takes so much space on your screen. It's just so difficult to navigate. And I mean, you know, that's just one thing, but I just find having one channel for each guitar, you can bend the sound easier. It just works for me, and I feel like you're kind of committing something and you're getting on with it and you're standing by that decision.
Do you do that with just you said obviously you go in, I take it you go the like, I don't know, 2 or 3 into the mixer and then into the one? Would those mics all be on one amp and one cabinet? Do you have 2 heads, 2 cabinets? Do you feed 2 heads from an effects send into a return?
It's usually going on one cab, and then I'll have all the mics kind of brought up on faders, and then I'll just play around with the blend until I find something that kind of I think is going to work really well. One thing I do have, which has changed my guitar recording so much, is I got it's like an amp switch by a company called KHE, and it allows me to connect a bunch of heads together, and then while I can have the guitarist playing, and then while the track is playing, I can actually just switch heads that are going into the cab in real time, and that's been insane for me. That's been like that's changed the game, because usually I'd have to have someone unplugging the back of the amp, you've got to turn the amp off, and then you've forgotten the sound of the one you're comparing it to, and it's just a mess. And this is just like one switch, and it's sent.
I used something very similar to that over at Two Notes. It was called an Ampete, but it was a bit different. You still had to kind of like go, I think you had to still switch between things, and you couldn't, it wasn't quite real time. It was still a little bit of latency in between, because it had to obviously switch and then switch back on.
Yeah, I don't like things like that, because it's the great thing is with this box is like it is pretty instant. So like I can have a chorus playing and I can just go bang, bang, bang. Oh, that's the head.
So cool. So cool.
It's wicked. And that's been a big game changer for me.
I need to have a little look into that. We've got Ray Mitchell the fourth, who has asked, do you ever use low mid-side delay to make mono instruments wide?
No, not really. But I do some mid-side EQ on my stereo mix. I use the Chandler Curve Bender to do that.
Love that thing.
Yeah, but you got to be so careful with the sides because it can really turn into a mess. So I don't do too much, but sometimes I may high pass the sides a little bit and I may brighten them up in some kind of area there, but I tend not to go too far with it.
It's a weird one as well because you can run into a lot of phase problems.
Yeah, and also mono compatibility can just go out the window.
Yeah, completely. Cool. Dominic Hodgkiss, cheers, man. Got that Daft Punk tune in my folder too. Low end is wicked. Got Catherine Williams, got a third one as well. Any tips on promoting yourself, getting employment as an editor, mix engineer? What do you look for someone like personally like to hire? Do you have any jobs going?
No,
Straight to the point on that last one.
I sadly don't have any jobs going, but what I would say is just like look around you and see if you know any producers that you could maybe just ask if you can just go and be on the session, be really quiet in the room, just learn everything you can from them and try and learn how you could potentially make their life easier. So maybe if you see them and they're struggling with editing and they've got like they take so much time to edit, maybe that's where you could step in and be, hey, I can make life easier for you by taking care of this. And if you can show someone what you could bring to the table, then you then become invaluable to them. So just see if there's ways that you can kind of do that. In terms of promoting yourself as a mix engineer, it's all in your work. So just spend a long time, get really good at it, and just put yourself out there. And people when they hear what you're doing, they'll want to be involved with you.
I have a couple of.
I think you've just frozen on me.
Oh, I think we've frozen.
Yeah, I think you.
Oh, we're back.
Yeah, I can see you now.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I don't know.
Should we pick a winner for this?
Yes, I think we should. Oh, we've got one more question. Do this one. Austin Rome. Do you think it's possible to achieve the same sonic results in a recording that's completely programmed, recorded and mixed it in the box compared to one that's been recorded with analog gear, mic'd and mixed in a hybrid setup?
Well, I mean, it's a tough question. I mean, you're going to get different results, I think. But I mean, when you pick one of those methods, you're picking a certain sound. Like, I mean, obviously, if you want the drum kit to sound as real as it can be, you kind of need to have a drummer playing. I mean, I know there's loads of software that sounds really good now, but I mean, I don't think anything's still. There's still a certain way that a drummer plays those ghost notes and stuff, which you can only,
even with an electric kit,
yeah,
you can capture a performance, but it's not quite the same, is it?
But I think when you're making the production, you make those decisions. Like, I mean, if a real sounding drum kit is something you want, then take the time to go to a studio and do those drums, and then take it back and do the other stuff if you want to do it like that. But I think it's all down to you've got to decide what about the production and how you want it to sound. There are ways to get certain things, like maybe you'll use a software plugin for the guitars, but then you'll get them reamped after. There's so many different things you can do, and it's all dependent on your production kind of decisions, really, I think.
Okay, so we've got quite a few questions through on here. We're now at the end of it as well, so it's come nice full circle. Do you have a winner? Do you have a favourite question that's been asked at all?
I have decided that I think we should give the pop shield to the pop filter rather to Catherine Williams.
Catherine Williams, I agree. I think she had some very, very good questions in there. Awesome. Right, well, we've come to the end of this now, so I really want to say thanks, mate. I really do appreciate you giving us your time. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of stuff coming up in the near future as well once we're out of lockdown. In the meantime, we'll have a lot of stuff going up on the blog very soon. We've got a lot of exciting bits and bobs going on. And to you, Romesh, just stay safe. I hope everything goes all right for you with these mixes, and we'll probably talk off stream.
Yeah, nice one.
Brilliant. All right, thank you very much for watching, guys. Cheers.
Later. Bye.